Welcome to another episode of The Strict. Today we're here with Jessie Herman. She is an associate producer who often works in documentary archives.
Thanks for having me. The jobs I'd had in the past, they involved many aspects of the filmmaking process, but this one was pretty straightforward in we need somebody to both manage digital archival materials, but also actually go into the library and go request an appointment in the research room and go reserve boxes and then go with gloves on and look through things page by page or receipt by receipt and there was something very satisfying about that, because it was again, I've just gotten into these experiences in the past where that's kind of the pitch of what I'll do and you get roped into other things. This was a very satisfyingly straightforward you will go to the New York Public Library at this time. You will look through a draft of Truman Capote's In Cold Blood or James Baldwin or something. And then you will come back and you'll tell us what you found. So that, yeah, it was totally all archival. And now the film is we just locked picture a couple weeks ago. And now I'm considered an archival coordinator or something, which...
Yeah, is that a different department in terms of titles?
In the world of archive, you're doing research. You're either researching to find new archival, or you get archival in and you determine what the best choices might be, or how do we ingest it properly so it can get into Avid properly or Premiere properly. But I'd never done a thing where, yeah, it was just all you're doing is researching. We don't need you to actually make a ton of creative choices about what photograph is best for this episode. We actually just need you to go tell us is there in this documentation anything saying this? And we can't take photographs because it's an old archive, so you have to go in and we trust you. And that...
Okay, so that was my first
different
question.
Oh yeah.
Because people who I don't know anything about this job even exists basically is
yeah,
why isn't it digital, this stuff, and why can't you take pictures?
I find that there's always this effort being made from people working in the archives that I speak to who are we're trying really hard to get this material to you. I think it's sort of an understaffed thing. A lot of times, let's say you're talking about James Baldwin or Truman Capote, or some writer who's passed away, and they've given their materials to a research center or to a college archive. It could be where they went to school or something. So it could be kind of an obscure place in in a funny state, not in a big city where there's not a lot of folks to do this type of work. And I feel when I've been communicating with people, a lot of times it's something you just have to ask for, hey, this thing, I can see online that it's been logged, it's been documented as existing, but you don't have it digitized. Could I request that? And that costs money and time for them to do. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where I think, let's say you have a document that's so amazing and incredible, you want to feature it in your movie. Sometimes at the end of that trail of trying to find the permissions and stuff, it's just one random person working the desk at this random, in this random archive, at this random university, and they'll just be thank you so much. That will be 16 weeks to digitize for you because we just don't have the time nor the
Wow.
and so they'll do it for you, and I think they want to do it, but it's just things are in the move over. It's a lot of stuff just hasn't been, because they exist in these really strange scattered places. You would think that anything that was really fascinating lived at New York Public Library or some sort of not the National Archives or something, but it doesn't. Some of these are at the University of Texas at Austin, and it's just Sarah in the research room that has to get you that photo of this poet that you want. That's part of what makes it fun, but also frustrating. So we would have instances where I would place an order and the estimate would be 32 weeks. And it's okay, but we have a year to make this movie. So I'm going to wait to see what the quality of a photograph looks like, but that we need for Netflix to approve, but I can't see it until Sarah decides to scan it. It's just it's not as much of a solid, tight workflow as you'd think. It's very weird.
It's kind of a relief because almost all these conversations end up we talk about AI and like the future of the industry, but it's
Mm-hmm.
actually so weirdly, I mean, maybe, and also I'm just a Luddite, but like it's such a relief that it's just like people
Mm-hmm.
need to do these things. Like not
Mm-hmm.
everything's just on the internet. Like it's not just
No.
like if you don't find it in a Google search, it doesn't exist.
No.
Like we
No.
still have the real world that we need to
Yeah.
account for.
Yeah. I would actually say that like AI, this is a big statement, and maybe we'll talk later about if like all of this could make it into anywhere, because I might feel bad about saying it, but AI really hurt us in making this movie, because this New Yorker documentary, because we would have people on our team that would say, I wonder how many books David Remnick has written, for example. We want to put that fact in our opening montage. And you Google, and now in Google, there's an AI like assistant, and it
Mm-hmm.
comes up with like this auto-generated like answer. And it would say, good question. David Remnick has written 11 books or 12 books, blah, blah, blah. Well, that answer is wrong. But let's say our director finds that number online because he decides to do his own work and be a researcher. He then
Right.
comes to us and says, he's written 12 books, go find them. And then we can't find them. And so then you have to disprove the AI, like you have to prove the AI wrong, and you're fighting up against, you know, and so it actually was harder for us to like do archival research work. Yeah, we like clashed on that. Like it was weird. It's even beyond like just being in the actual physical archives or something. Like we talk about human error a lot, but like AI error when you're
Right.
trying to like write a piece or like make a film that's like involves historical components where like there is a right and wrong answer. And yeah, it was really troubling actually to like go up against that. We did it all the time, and we would just be like, God, he found that online from like AI. Like that was an AI
Right.
generated answer that we now
And
have to
in, yeah.
disprove.
And in
Yeah.
an effort to save time, wasted a lot of time and
Yes,
resources.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is very satisfying, I think, and really comforting in a way when you're trying to find a material, and like there is just like a really well-meaning person, like hardworking person at the end of the trail who's like, yeah, I totally can do that, but I'm just slow. You're like, me too. Like we're just people. Like, but it's like the thought and care that goes into like that, and like having that, it's much more special. And then something's digitized for the first time, and you're responsible for the thing being accessible more widely for the first time, and that's cool because you're like, oh, it really is never before seen. Yeah.
You're building like our civilization's library.
Yeah. It's really a fun thing to do if you care enough about doing it. It's cool.
We should back up and give a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit of context, because you have mentioned that you work at Istrico, but that's why we are connected. Is you did briefly join the Istrico team. What kind of takeaways did you have from that experience? Because then you moved to New York City and you kind of like had a big reset.
Yeah. It was like I had come from this experience of like working on a dock kind of at the beginning of COVID, and then got hired at Istrico. And it was at the time my thinking was that it would kind of pivot me out of like doc work and out of like filmmaking and stuff. But honestly, it was like the projects I wound up being a part of were so helpful in sort of like understanding like the production side of stuff. The really like, it's transformative sounds like so dramatic, but if like really meaningful things I worked on there were like these profiles we had done of farmers, and they were kind of scattered across the country, but I had gone on 2 trips for that. One was in Alabama and one was in Wisconsin. They were like the most lovely experiences. It was like the Alabama one, we like showed up and we were like, we stayed on this woman's like farm, and this man named Cowboy every night, who was like her ranch hand, but also kind of like mystery, like sort of we didn't know what the deal was between the two of them. But that I think actually is what really got me understanding like, oh, when you're out in the field like that, basically kind of field producing, like you then can develop these relationships with people, and you come back with these really amazing stories that live outside of whatever profile you've made. So it's like we made the profile of this woman, my memories of her and like the stories she told and stuff. I was like, oh, those are for me. Like those are things I get to keep. I think that part of the filmmaking process, like that is doc work. Like we made like a mini document. I mean, you know, it's like that, those were mini docs. Like, and so it actually, in being there, I was like, oh, I'm like actually seeing what this part of the process like makes me feel, I like what it can offer me. And so no, then it did actually, then when I got the opportunity to like work on this show, I was just like, and then got to have the experience of being with this family. I was like, that's what that was like. It's like you go into people's homes and you really get to know them and like develop this kind of rapport with them, and then something kind of deeper. And out of that, I think you get better work. You get a better storyteller out of them, or better, because they trust you and you want them to. And so it all like, it was only after like moving to the Jinx that I actually understood how Istrico was like that perfect kind of like gateway into like very personal, like meaningful ways of like connecting with your subjects. Like it was the first time I really connected with any subject of like anything I had worked on.
And it sounds like it, I mean, it always dawns on me every time of like how important it is who is on set and what you do on set, because that does translate to the camera. And so if you don't ask that question, it's not on the tape. It's gone.
No.
Or if you don't, you know, push in this direction or ask about the other room or whatever, it's just not there. So like how important it is to stay curious and connect with your subjects.
Yeah. That's a huge thing, is like the curiosity aspect of it. I really became like, obviously nothing you'd ever want to ask them. You'd never want to be damaging or anything like that. But I was just like, oh, I actually do care. Like I care about, like I have this inherent, like, I don't know. I feel for these people, like just without even knowing them. And like, I think that helps you ask more thoughtful questions, and I think you get better answers.
Yeah, did you come from any sort of archival or librarian or any sort of background that led you to this, or was it from the production angle?
Okay, I'll say I did script coverage for narrative stuff. And then I got the opportunity to go into doc work on the post side. So the doc had already been made, and it was about generating certain deliverables like archival sheets, where I listed all the archival in a doc. That's where I got my feet wet, like in the archival space, was through documentaries. Obviously was at Istrico for some time, and then got the opportunity to like join like this team doing a docu-series. Was so bad that like 6 months in, I got called by one of our producers, and they were like, listen, like, we don't know what to like do. Like because I would cry a lot. Like production's hard, as like you probably know, as like production is so hard. You get yelled at. People are really not nice to you. You don't have like the protection of like being behind a laptop. Like, and he called me and he was just like, listen, I think like, you know, he didn't have to tell me I was bad. Like we all knew I was bad. The archival department needs some help. There's one person operating it. And I was like, thank God, like, get me out of this. Like, I loved the work I had done previously on this, you know, on other docs in the archival post space. So pivoted to that and just loved it. And I was on that show for over 2 years. It was so crazy working in archival, like on a true crime show. You then have like more investigative people come in, story people come in, you know, a lot of it's like pretty grim and like difficult to work with, but so satisfying, like to find answers to things. We like had suspicions about things being true, and you can actually go to a courthouse and look at documents from a court case and like find that in fact somebody was like guilty of this thing, or, you know, perhaps like committed this thing, or was ethically really like, yeah, that's how I pivoted. Like I basically went from being like an intern at like 2 or 3 production like offices where like I would read scripts, to then getting asked like, do I want to work in the like more archival space, like, but on docs. And that's how that started. And then kind of like by the end of that show, I was like managing the archive for that whole thing. And then, yeah, I just kind of never really looked back. Archives are so cool. They're just so cool if you like are interested in that. If you're not interested, it comes across as like the most boring thing. But if you have the like instinct to want to like uncover something, that's totally the place to do that. And it's something you can't really do in scripted, more narrative things. It's something that like doc stuff and like nonfiction, like that really is the place where like there's an archival element. And so it just all works. It all works because I'm interested in like the truth telling aspect, like, so it's like a really cool thing to get to work in that area of this like what I think is like the coolest genre of films.
Like, how much of it is paperwork and how much of it is like digging through
Ooh,
things?
I would say that when you're in the process, obviously like the 3 stages of like, I guess, kind of making a movie is like your pre-production, your production, your post. I would say when you're in production, you're still heavily in the like actual filmmaking process. There is a lot of like going out and finding things, and that can be like being in the physical archives, going to people's homes, like into their basements to see what photographs they have. It can be like Google searching. And I would say the paperwork and like the more kind of like, like what becomes kind of like you being really at your laptop doing stuff is then in post when you have to kind of account for the archival you're going to be including in the movie. That would happen through a kind of a series of deliverables that like the network or whoever's taking on the project like would ask of you. And then when things can get really, I don't think they're boring. A lot of people in archival would say this is where stuff gets really boring, is when your team of like lawyers have to come in and basically say, yeah, that there is a good fair use argument for featuring this archival, and it is justifiable that you would have this in your movie, and no, there isn't a defamation risk here by putting this in your movie. Do we have the signed license? Where are all these licenses? Can we put them in a Google Drive folder? The fun part is going out and getting it. I would say it's like a perfect half and half of kind of cool, interesting, what am I going to discover stuff with like kind of like have to then,
Yeah.
do the work of like cleaning up all the crap that kind of goes with wanting to put someone's stuff in your movie that you maybe can't track down, or maybe they've died, or maybe it makes them look really bad,
Yeah.
Especially when I was on the Jinx, like I thought, which was like obviously about this like serial killer and like, people who sort of helped him basically in committing crimes, like making a claim like that like, hey, this person that's still alive, they actually like helped this guy basically commit murder. It's a huge claim. It's something that like, and so I do believe in the process of like, as much as I'm like, God, it stinks to have to be on a legal review. It's like,
yeah.
but like, if you're going to claim on an HBO show that somebody, was a part of like the web of people that like, caused people to die, like, you need to back that up. Like, you can't just say that. And it could ruin someone's life. It could get someone fired. So that's when like the diligence of like really making sure you have the answer and you're not just like, it's not flimsy. It does matter. So like, I've seen that happen where people are like, no, just say it. Like, let's just say it. It's like, but you actually like making thoughtful movies is like not just saying something. Like, you have to say it and know why you're saying it.
I have a note here that says I should ask you about cold calling.
I will say, like, sometimes like on a project you have to kind of develop relationships with people that are, I don't know, like on the show, like on the Jinx, like, one of my jobs was like to kind of get a hold of some of this archival material from a family who lived in Sparta, New Jersey, and they were older and had like grown children and cared about the project, but like you kind of needed to befriend them before they would trust you to just kind of walk into their basement and go look at stuff that belonged to their sister who had been murdered.
Right.
Like, and so I actually, like, it's one of these weird things where like you have to sort of get people's trust and gain their trust, and like that happens through, for me, it was through developing like relationships with them over text, and then they would call, and then I would go visit them, and I would bring donuts, and we would sit and have breakfast, and then after that you sort of are like, and can I check out, I'm here to do this. Oh yeah, okay, you're here to do this, right? Hey, let me take a photograph, and then I maybe, you have to kind of like work with like,
Wow.
you have to meet people like with where they want to meet you. But yeah, I think like a lot of times that can't just happen over email anymore, or like an inquiry on like a library's like website. Like, you actually have to like be a little bit more bold and like find these people other ways.
It's also so much is like tit for tat, like influencers don't post anything unless they're gonna get something for free. And like,
Mm-hmm.
it's this weirdly charming old school
Yeah.
thing where you're just like, hey, out of the goodness of your heart and just to like
Yeah.
share your story, can
Yeah.
we have like this personal information or this resource?
Yeah.
And people are
Yeah.
like on board because stories matter and stories are
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. And then I've wondered, like, a photograph of my father or a photograph of my mom, like, or anything, like, would I say yes? And I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's a really personal thing. Like, people's personal materials are so personal. And you don't think about it because we're so numb to it. We see true crime shows and it's photos of these victims as kids or as adults. And you're like, their parents gave up those photos.
So I'd imagine sometimes the thing that the director's asking you for, the producer's asking for, just doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a common practice or something you do when necessary to use stock footage and mislead the audience, or at least color in the audience's view of what's happening on
Yeah.
screen?
Yeah. Yes, I would say in any project I've worked on that hasn't just been like completely where I've been really remote and like distance from it, where I've been close, on the ground with the team, there has been either the suggestion of using stock footage or the actual like using of stock footage. And I don't think it's inherently like a frowned upon practice. I mean, of course, like we all imagine that anything like a team could shoot like themselves would be the most beautiful and like artistically driven thing, but there's actually really sick stock footage out in the world. And yeah, in the projects I've been on, it's something that's been utilized. I will say that on the topic of like people asking for things that don't exist, it's something that's so unavoidable. And I think the managing of expectations, my preference ethically is to sort of manage those expectations and hope that we can just find an alternative that doesn't compromise. Not everybody wants to do that. I think sometimes in order to really, people just really want to like tell a version of a story. I feel that like docs used to be all about observational verite, like just I'm observing the world and I'm unbiased and I don't have an opinion. This is what's happening in front of me. I'm just going to document it and show you, and you decide what you think. They are now much more opinionated. Like the storyteller, the director, like has an opinion and like they are shaping the story to sort of fit that opinion. And so I just think then that's what we come up against when we're like talking about like implementing like certain things like stock footage, of a different city and saying it's this city, or of a different event, historical event, and saying it's this event. Like, how do we want to be like manipulating a genre that to me is sort of should be about truth telling or just about objective telling?
People trust it to be true, so you
People
can't
trust
just
it.
then pivot into like a
Yeah.
fun opinion piece.
And I think too, it's like you see action movies or like horror movies, you see something happen and you're like, well, duh, that's not real. You watch a doc without that saying, you watch a doc with a lot more trust.
Yeah.
But what if you're watching a doc that has been manipulated or has like is featuring something that is not reflective of the exact truth? How do you feel as a viewer? And I just know that as a viewer, I would feel cheated.
Yeah.
But it's people are making these choices now. Like, and I just, but I will just say to end that thing, my favorite types of docs are still ones that are true observational ones where you're just taking in a space, a place, a person, and no one's telling you anything about them. They're just giving them a chance to be seen.
Yeah.
I still think that's the coolest type of film that could be made, honestly.
Same. And it's because it's the hardest, but
yeah,
that's why it's cool. Do you have any sort of like North Star that you're aiming for as you go from gig to gig?
Ultimately, probably being like a story producer. That kind of sounds like the thing that would fit like next. I think like really staying in the story aspect of docs is like what I feel strongest and most curious about. And I think that's like when you're already in the archives, like you already have feelings about what choices should be made. The archival component is a part of the story. I think I want to like stay in the more creative kind of domain. And then I thought to myself, it's funny, when I was first starting out, like I always thought, oh, I'll produce and I'll never want to direct anything. It just didn't sound right. And then in the past year, I'm like, I would love to direct one day. Like that would be really cool. Like, why not? It's cool to make choices, actually.
Yeah,
like,
and as you get older, you realize you know just as much as everybody else in the room. So
yeah, like
you
I
can
think
do
that's
it.
like I think that's also what I'm realizing is just like, no, I actually think that one day directing would be really cool. Why wouldn't I want to be at the top of that? Why wouldn't I want to be making all the decisions and oversee everything?
Yeah.
Like, it's scary, but it's also like people can do it, you know? But story producer is probably next. That's what I'm manifesting for my next thing.
Well, that all sounds amazing, and we'll definitely be following your journey as you archive your way through docs and other creative pursuits. Thank you. And thank you for listening to The Strick. If you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear them. Comment here, on Instagram, or LinkedIn. This is a podcast from Istrico Productions. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.